I'll never forget the day Karen's white Range Rover sank nose first into the mud, her manicured hands slamming the wheel as she screamed for help while I leaned against my fence and watched the queen of the HOA drown in her own arrogance. By the time the tow truck dragged that wreck out, her perfect image was shattered, her car looked like it had fought a war with the swamp, and the entire neighborhood was laughing behind her back. That was the moment the balance of power shifted, not because I shouted louder, but because I finally let her trip over her own pride. It didn't start that way. My name's Ethan Miller, and I live on a small farm just outside Pinewood Estates, one of those polished neighborhoods with manicured lawns, identical mailboxes, and an HOA that thinks they run the universe. My farm sits in a bad spot. Bad for me, perfect for them. It's right between their subdivision and the main road into town. At first I understood the temptation. Why drive the long way around when you could cut across my land and save 3 minutes? So I cleared a straight path wide enough for their SUVs, thinking maybe, just maybe, we could coexist. For a while it worked. But arrogance is a weed, it always grows back. Slowly they stopped respecting the path. One by one they veered off, chewing through rows of young corn, leaving ruts that broke my heart every time I walked the field. And the worst offender without question was Karen. Karen. If you've ever met a Karen, you already know the type. Late 40s, platinum blonde hair that screams salon every week, oversized sunglasses even on cloudy days. She drove her Range Rover like it was a chariot from the gods, swerving close to the stalks just for fun, laughing as if she owned my land. One morning I waved her down, standing at the bend of the field. I wasn't rude. My voice was calm, even pleading. I told her straight, "Please, for the sake of my crops, stay on the path I cleared." She leaned out her window, smirked, tugging at her lipstick, and said, "You don't tell the HOA where to drive. This isn't your call." Then she flicked her hand like she was brushing dirt off her designer jacket and sped off, spraying soil onto my boots. That little gesture, it branded itself into me. In that moment, I knew she didn't see me as a neighbor or even as a man. I was just an obstacle under her polished shoes. I tried the proper route. I put on a clean shirt, grabbed my papers, and walked into their board meeting. Imagine me, a farmer in boots, standing in front of their mahogany table, explaining how their residents were crushing my crops. I begged them to stop. Instead of listening, they laughed. One guy joked about me smelling like hay, another smirked and whispered to his buddy like I wasn't standing right there. And Karen. She leaned back in her chair, arms folded, enjoying the show. Her eyes sparkled with mockery. I walked out of that room heavier than when I walked in, each step sinking with humiliation. That night I sat in my cabin staring at the dark fields, wondering if I should just give up. Maybe sell the land, walk away, stop fighting a battle I couldn't win. For the first time I doubted myself. Was I the fool here? Was I the stubborn one clinging to ground that no one else respected? But giving up didn't sit right in my chest. The land was my family's legacy. Every seed in that soil had my sweat on it. Why should I surrender because a woman with sunglasses thought she was untouchable? The next morning I hammered signs around the property. Private land. No trespassing. I knew paper wouldn't stop steel, but it was something. And predictably, it didn't stop Karen. She came barreling through again, her tires spitting mud, smashing fresh seedlings like they meant nothing. That night a storm rolled in. Rain pounded the roof, the kind that turned soil into sludge. And as I watched the water pool in the field, an idea sparked. A dangerous one. If they wanted to treat my land like a playground, I'd give them a ride they wouldn't forget. The next morning I grabbed my shovel. The ground was soft, begging to be molded. I dug a trench right across Karen's favorite path, wide enough to catch a vehicle, narrow enough to look harmless from a distance. I filled it with muck manure rainwater, stirred it until it looked like just another puddle. To the untrained eye, it was nothing. To me, it was the perfect trap. As I patted down the last bit of dirt, I felt something shift inside me. Not guilt, not exactly satisfaction either, but a strange calm. I wasn't forcing anyone. The sign was clear. The land was mine. If Karen ignored it, she'd face the consequences. Simple as that. The next day, like clockwork, I heard her coming. The growl of that Range Rover was unmistakable. I leaned on the fence arms crossed, watching the horizon. Sunglasses, glinting hair perfectly coiffed, Karen approached with the same arrogant swagger. She didn't slow down. She never did. And then, boom! The front tires dipped, then sank. The whole SUV lurched forward, swallowed by the mud. The sound was glorious, sucking sludge, grinding metal wheels, spinning helplessly. She gunned the engine mud, spraying like fireworks, but the more she fought, the deeper she sank. Her smug face twisted into panic. I could hear her shouting, "Help! Somebody help me!" She pounded the steering wheel, her voice cracking, but there was no one around to answer. Cell service was weak out here. I knew it better than anyone. Watching her wave her phone in the air, desperate for a signal, was like watching a queen stripped of her crown. Minutes dragged into hours. Finally, she tried to climb out. The second her designer shoes hit the ground, mud swallowed her ankles. She shrieked, stumbled, cursed at the sky. By the time she found enough signal to call a tow truck, she looked like she'd fought a war, hair-frizzed, makeup-streaked blouse, ruined. When the tow truck finally arrived, the driver couldn't hide his grin. Each tug sank the Range Rover deeper, the bumper scraping, paint tearing. By the time they yanked it free, her luxury ride looked like a farm beater that had lost a bar fight. Karen's face burned red, her humiliation thick in the air. I stayed in the shade silent, savoring the theater. It wasn't revenge I was tasting. It was justice, slow-cooked and served cold. Word spread faster than wildfire. By evening, everyone in Pinewood Estates had heard about their queen bee stuck knee-deep in cow muck screaming for help while her prized SUV got baptized in manure. Neighbors whispered, laughed behind her back. Some even drove out just to see the crater she'd fallen into. For the first time, I wasn't the butt of their jokes. She was. Karen the Untouchable was now the spectacle, and she hated every second of it. But Karen wasn't done. At the next HOA meeting, she stormed in hair stiff with hairspray, pointing her manicured finger at me. "He sabotaged me. He owes me damages," she barked. Her voice shook with fury. For a heartbeat, I worried they'd side with her. But then something happened. I'll never forget. The board, those same polished people who once mocked me, turned on her. They asked why she ignored the signs, why she thought she could drive over someone else's land, why she believed the rules didn't apply to her. And for the first time, Karen didn't have answers. Their laughter wasn't aimed at me anymore. It was aimed at her. I watched the smugness drain from her face as realization set in. She wasn't the queen anymore. She was the fool. The fallout wasn't cheap. Rumor had it she spent thousands repairing that Range Rover new bumper transmission damage, endless detailing to scrub out the stench of manure. But some stains don't wash out. Weeks later, I spotted her at the grocery store still driving it. Streaks of dried mud clung to the edges, faint but visible. She kept her head down, avoided eye contact. For once, Karen had nothing to say. And the best part, my fields grew undisturbed after that. Not a single tire touched my crops again. The corn stretched tall, green, and proud, while Karen sulked in the shadows of her own embarrassment. I didn't have to fight anymore. The land spoke for itself, and the HOA learned its lesson. Justice had been served not with fists or courts, but with a hole in the ground and a woman too arrogant to see it. I just built the stage. She performed the act herself. Sometimes the sweetest justice is letting arrogance bury itself.